Thanks for tuning in to your daily dose of quick real estate updates, local housing trends, and market data, plus tips, tools, and strategies to help you buy, rent, or invest with confidence. You're now getting ready with RealiCare Reports, powered by the innovation team, Cami and Rex. Now go grab your favorite morning beverage, whether that's coffee or tea, and let's enjoy this episode.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're setting our sights on a really interesting spot in Florida real estate, Palm Bay. We've got some fresh Redfin data, February to April this year, 2025.
Yep, hot off the press.
And our goal really is to, cut through the noise and give you a clear picture of what's actually happening in the Palm Bay housing market right now.
Exactly. We're going to break down the key numbers, sale prices, how fast homes are selling, competition levels, especially compared to nearby cities.
Like Melbourne and Vero Beach.
Right. And we'll even look at who's moving in and who's moving out. Plus, maybe touch on some environmental risks you should probably know about.
Okay, think of it as your quick guide to the Palm Bay scene.
Precisely.
So let's jump straight into the trends. February 2025 data shows the median sale price in Palm Bay was $330,000.
Correct.
Now, that's up slightly, right? About 1.1% from last year.
That's right. A small nudge upwards year over year. So prices are generally climbing, but gently.
Okay. But you mentioned something interesting before about the price per square foot.
Yeah. Yes, that's where it gets a bit more nuance for you. The median price per square foot was $188 in February.
And that was
actually down 3.3% compared to last year.
Huh. So the overall median price is up, but the cost per square foot is down. How does that work?
Well, it could mean a few things. Maybe, larger homes are selling, perhaps one's needing updates or a bit further out. That could bring the average per square foot cost down.
Right. Even if the overall prices are slightly higher.
Or it could just be a shift in the type of properties hitting the market at that specific time. Inventory mix, basically.
Gotcha. So you might pay a bit more overall, but potentially get more house for your money in terms of space?
Potentially, yeah. Now, how long are these places staying on the market?
Good question.
The data shows an average of 98 days on market in February 2025.
98 days, and how does that compare?
Well, that's noticeably longer than the year before. It was 72 days back in February 2024.
Okay, so things are definitely slowing down a bit in terms of transaction speed.
Seems that way. Buyers might have a little more time to think, maybe look around more.
Does that slower pace mean fewer homes are actually selling then?
You'd think so, but interestingly, no. 245 homes sold in February this year.
Compared
to 225 the previous February. So sales volume is actually up.
Okay, that's a bit counterintuitive. More sales, but taking longer.
Yeah, it could mean there's still solid underlying demand driving the number of sales up. But maybe buyers are just being a bit more deliberate. Or perhaps inventory ticked up slightly, giving them more choice and thus more time. Broader economic stuff could play a role too,
Right. Okay, so more homes changing hands, just not quite as frenzied as before.
That seems like a fair way to put it.
Now, what about getting a deal? Are buyers able to negotiate much off the list price?
So the average home sold for about 97.1% of its list price in February.
97.1%.
Which is down just a tiny bit, like 0.41 percentage points from the year before.
So a very slight shift. Suggests maybe a tiny bit more room for negotiation for you as a buyer.
A tiny bit, yeah, on average. Doesn't mean huge discounts across the board, but maybe a little more flexibility than there was.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. How competitive is Palm Bay overall? I saw this Redfin Compete score. What's that tell us?
Yeah, the Compete score. It's Redfin's attempt to boil down market heat into one number, 0 to 100.
And Palm Bay's is?
It scores a 33. Redfin calls that somewhat competitive.
Somewhat competitive. So not crazy bidding wars everywhere, but not dead either.
Exactly. For you as a buyer, it means, expect some competition, especially for the really good listings, but you probably won't face 10 offers on every single house.
What does somewhat competitive look like on the ground? How many offers typically?
On average, homes get about 2 offers.
2 offers. Okay.
And they tend to sell for, on average, about 2% below the list price.
Right, aligning with that 97.1% sale-to-list ratio we talked about.
Exactly. And they go pending, meaning under contract, in around 80 days. That's based on the last 3 months of data.
80 days pending. But then there are these hot homes, right?
Yes, the hot homes. Those behave differently.
How so?
These are the prime listings.
Yeah.
Maybe great location, perfect condition, priced right, they tend to sell much closer to the list price, maybe even at list.
And faster.
Much faster. They go pending in about 34 days on average.
Wow, less than half the time of the average home.
Yep. So if you see a home flagged as hot, you got to move quicker.
Definitely a two-speed market feel then. Now, how does Palm Bay stack up against its neighbors? You mentioned Melbourne and Vero Beach data.
Yeah, this comparison is really useful if you're considering the broader area. Let's look at Melbourne first.
Okay.
Melbourne's compete score is higher. It's 45. Still somewhat competitive, but clearly hotter than Palm Bay.
And how does that translate?
Homes there sell for about 4% below list, so a bit less of a discount than Palm Bay.
Yeah.
And they go pending much faster, around 55 days.
55 versus 80 in Palm Bay, that's significant.
It is. And Melbourne's hot homes, they fly off the market in about 27 days.
Whoa. So Melbourne's definitely a quicker, maybe tougher market for buyers.
Seems that way.
Mm-hmm.
Could be driven by, different job clusters, amenities, that sort of thing.
Okay, makes sense. What about Vero Beach then?
Vero Beach is the complete opposite end of the spectrum.
Really?
Yeah. Its compete score is just 14. Redfin calls that not very competitive.
14, okay.
Multiple offers are pretty rare there. Homes sell for about 6% below list price on average.
Bigger discount.
Bigger discount, yeah. And they take quite a while to go, pending around 96 days.
Even longer than Palm Bay.
Right. Even their hot homes take about 52 days to go tending, which is, pretty slow compared to the others.
So Vero Beach sounds much more like a buyer's market, relatively speaking. Lots more time, more negotiating power.
That's what the data suggests, absolutely. Quite a range in that Space Coast area.
It really is. Okay, let's switch gears. Who's moving? We have migration data, right? Where are people coming from, and where are Palm Bay folks looking to go?
Yeah, this stuff is fascinating for understanding, like, the pull of an area. So
Right.
between February and April this year, a pretty significant chunk, 47% of Palm Bay home searchers on Redfin were actually looking to move out of the Palm Bay metro area.
Almost half. Wow.
Almost half. But flip side, 53% were looking to stay within the metro area. So it's a pretty even split, really.
Interesting balance. So where are the people looking to move in from?
The biggest sources were Orlando,
Hmm?
about 740 searchers looking at Palm Bay.
Okay, relatively close by.
Yep. Then Miami, very close behind with 727 searchers.
Another major Florida city.
Right. And then number 3 was New York with 315 people searching for
New
Miami.
York. Okay, so significant out-of-state interest too, likely cost of living driving some of that.
You'd have to assume so, yeah. Cost, maybe lifestyle, weather, the usual factors.
And what about the people looking to leave Palm Bay? Where are they searching?
The top spots were Raleigh, North Carolina, that had 19 searches originating from Palm Bay.
Okay.
Then Ocala, Florida, with 17 searches.
Staying in Florida, but different vibe.
Exactly. And Asheville, North Carolina, with 14 searches.
Another Carolina spot. Interesting. The outbound number seems smaller, though.
They are smaller in raw numbers in this data set, yeah. But it gives you a flavor of where some residents might be looking next, maybe different job markets, different scenery, or pace of life.
Okay, so we've got the broad trends, the competition, the migration. Can we look at some actual sales, like specific examples?
Absolutely. Grounding it in real examples helps a lot. For instance, take 1190 Jaslow Saint SE.
Okay.
It sold for $120,000, right at list price. And it was only on the market for 49 days.
Relatively quick, sold at asking. Suggests good demand at that lower price point, maybe.
Could be, yeah. Or maybe just a well-priced, desirable property. Now, contrast that with 1029 Durango Saint SE.
All right.
Sold for $415,000. Also rated at its list price.
Okay.
But it took 109 days to sell.
Much longer. So higher price point, maybe a smaller buyer pool. Took longer to find the right match, even though it's sold for asking in the end.
Exactly. It shows that patience can be needed in those higher brackets sometimes, for both buyers and sellers.
And then there was one that sold below list.
Yes, 1377 Valerius Saint SE, listed originally around $362,000, but sold for $325,000.
That's quite a bit lower. That 10% below list.
Yeah, roughly 10% under. And it was on the market for 123 days.
So that really shows the negotiation potential is real for some properties, especially maybe ones that sit a bit longer.
Definitely. These examples just underscore the variability. It's not one size fits all. Condition, exact location within Palm Bay, seller motivation. It all plays a part for you.
Absolutely. Okay, let's pivot to something increasingly critical. Environmental risks. What's the picture for Palm Bay?
Right. Super important long-term consideration. So flood risk first. It's rated as minor overall for Palm Bay.
Minor. Okay, that sounds relatively good for Florida.
Relatively, yeah.
Yeah.
About 12% of properties are estimated to have a risk of severe flooding over the next 30 years. And the data suggests that risk is actually increasing slower than the national average.
Okay. What about fire risk?
Fire risk is categorized as moderate, but a pretty large number, 76% of properties, have some level of wildfire risk over the next 30 years.
76%. Wow, okay. So moderate overall, but widespread potential exposure. Something for you to be aware of and prepare for.
Definitely. Now, wind risk.
Hurricanes, I'm guessing.
Primarily, yes. The wind risk is rated as extreme.
Extreme?
Yep. Essentially, 100% of properties are considered at risk of a severe wind event in the next 30 years. And there's even a note that future, rare, major storms could bring even stronger gusts.
Okay, that's a major factor. Insurance costs, building codes, resilience, all crucial for you there.
Absolutely critical. And finally, heat risk.
Which we hear so much about these days.
Indeed. Palm Bay faces an extreme heat risk. 99% of homes have what's called an extreme heat factor.
Extreme heat factor, and what does that mean practically?
It means the number of dangerously hot days is expected to climb significantly. They estimate about 8 days this year, reaching over 106 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, 8 days over 106 degrees Fahrenheit.
But in 30 years, they project that number will jump to 22 days.
22 days over 106. Wow, that's a huge increase. A major quality of life and, frankly, health consideration for you long term.
A very significant climate consideration, yes.
Okay, one last practical point before we wrap up. Getting around. Is Palm Bay walkable? Bikeable?
Not really walkable. The walk score is really low, just 13 out of 100. It's labeled car dependent.
So you definitely need a car.
Pretty much, yeah. The bike score is a bit better, 38 out of 100, which is somewhat bikeable.
Okay.
But realistically, for day-to-day life, you're probably driving. That's another cost factor for you to build into your budget.
Good point. Okay, so let's try and pull this all together for you listening. What's the takeaway on Palm Bay?
Well, we're seeing a market with slightly rising median prices overall, but that interesting dip in price per square foot. Maybe more space for the money, potentially.
Somewhat competitive, definitely less heated than nearby Melbourne, but way more active than, say, Vero Beach.
Exactly. And that split in migration is interesting, nearly half looking outward, but strong inbound interest from places like Orlando, Miami, and even New York.
And those environmental risks are definitely something you can't ignore, particularly the wind extreme risk and that significant projected increase in extreme heat days.
Yeah, those are major long-term factors. We saw sales volume is up, but homes are taking longer to sell on average compared to last year. Negotiation room seems slightly better, but varies wildly property to property.
And don't forget, you'll likely need a car.
Good reminder, yes.
So wrapping it all up, here's something to maybe chew on. Considering these mixed market signals, the slower pace but decent volume, the specific migration flows, and especially those significant environmental challenges, what do you think the long-term trajectory looks like for property values and just the overall desirability of living in Palm Bay?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do those factors balance out over time?
Something for you to ponder. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Well, that wraps up today's episode of Reality Reports, where real estate meets real life. For more updates, tools, and insights that will help you buy, rent, or invest with confidence, be sure to follow, subscribe, stay connected, stay informed, and stay ready. Until next time.